start sexual, it goes da 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 da, orgasm, shbam. Right? I'm going to go to sleep now. Okay, and that's represented in the way the masculine does life too. Direction, 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 direction. Then they need to, there's often this is full of. And we've experienced that too, right? When we've been feeling how when we go to the masculine, we go push, 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 exhaustion. It doesn't work for us. This is not natural to us, right? The feminine sexual arc looks like this. Excuse me for standing in front of it. Goes something like this. Yeah. Actually goes deeper. It's actually, the whole thing actually goes, right? Right? And then there's a height, ultimately, of orgasm, but it doesn't dip off really, right? It's the whole thing of, I need to join somewhere down there. Right? So we could also draw that as something that goes more like, if you compare it to the male thing, it goes like this, right? Now, the reason why it's important to remember that about how we are sexual is it's how we are in life too. And this is when I spoke yesterday and I was talking about the feminine success formula. Rhythms, I was talking about working with moon rhythms, planetary rhythms, equinoxes, solstices, that kind of thing. Equally so, our own rhythms, which is your own lunar cycle, for example, if you're still menstruating, or it's recognising the rhythms in your body, in your life, so, or in your business, right? So I was talking about in the Feminine Success Academy, we're going to go into that really deeply, about recognising rhythms in your body, in your life, and working with other rhythms. And then you're going to be working with things that are flowing. This is a flow. The feminine is all about flow. Right? Ali, do me a favour. There's a red folder back there. Please, you can give one to Kimberly. Then you can follow along. And you can write on it. Yeah.
Well, because just to be really clear, it wasn't like I had a massive orgasm. Like I actually didn't orgasm. But it's more the sensual, like I feel like the sensual level of it is stimulated. And that's the bit that the mind doesn't even look for or appreciate.
Right, without it having to end in orgasm or be some sort of culmination. Because the focus on orgasming, as in having a climax, in sex, for example, and the way that sex has been portrayed through pornography, for example, and gets pushed a lot in sexual dynamics, in relationships, often is driven by the male sexual arc, right? And it doesn't work for us. And we also don't start on. We're on, and then we kind of, there's a refractory, and there's a dispute. We're on, and then it refracts, and on, right? So we have to be brought on board, okay? And that's what seduction or foreplay is about for us. And foreplay is about having a beautiful, intimate interaction with your partner in the morning, about kissing, cuddling and touching during the day, and then it may end up sexual. You may be more on by the time you enter an actual sexual interaction and get naked kind of thing, right? So for us, back to what we were talking about yesterday, the feminine is about being in that pleasure thing all the time. And all the time doesn't mean you're on all the time. It's this thing about being turned on all the time, that's just not how it is for us. Now, but if you're following the flows of recognising that it's on and then it doesn't turn off, it goes inwards, it goes down, it gets deeper. And what often happens, because if we're forced into this arc, we are not permitted to recognise the depths and the undercurrents and the mysteries, which is what the feminine is about. It's about the deep mysteries. And that is where you end up roaring at the end of an orgasm. I was talking about yesterday. Okay. By the time I got there, I had reached one of these, actually, right? And that roar had come from down here, right? It was totally not mental. As I said yesterday, that was a poor imitation of the space it came from, because the roar came from that place. And it was not about I'm going to make a big loud sound now. It was literally like, if I don't do this, I'm going to end up all sleepy and all passive. It was like a calling from that part of myself. You've got to let out sound right now. You've got to just move this and go, this is me. That's what I was doing, is this is me. I was scared of leaving daylights out of him. But that's fine, right? Because I needed to do that for me. It was not like a mental, I'm going to rule now after I have multiple orgasms, right? Yeah, so that's what the mystery of the feminine. This is in response to your...
Actually, my arc was a little bit bigger, but I'm like, meaning, yes, there's up and down in a particular act, but my arc has been, oh my God, there was some great sex, and then, this is like over days and periods of...
This is why I'm drawing this. This is not just about a sexual act. This is about your life. Right? So you've got the microcosm, if you like, of a sexual interaction, and you've got the macrocosm of your life as a woman. And if we try to, as we were talking a lot about yesterday, if we try to live life from the male, directional, sexual, it's not an arc, it's a straight line pretty much, right? You see a man, you experience a man in sex, it kind of is, it's turn on, turn on, turn on, turn on, turn on, turn on, and then it falls off after ejaculation, right? And so one of the things I teach, but I'm not wanting to teach men at the moment, is how to slow that down. Because actually what ends up happening with the man, this is a total digression for what we really hear about, but what happens if you start to teach a man to recognise this, they can kind of start to get on board with it, right? And they're okay, and it's like, I have not lost stimulation right now, I'm just needing to be followed down. Because if you follow me down right now, we're going to go deeper together, and then this whole thing changes. This whole thing becomes a different dimension, right? He starts to follow you down more. He slows down this arc. He lasts longer, right? And then, of course, what ends up happening is the difference between what would usually happen for us is we follow the male sexual arc, we're going to get to kind of here in a sexual experience. I call that physical orgasm. You know? And I find that so utterly boring. It's so boring to me. And it's the kind of thing, again, that's portrayed in pornography, right? It's really boring. It's just not interesting. It's not actually what sex or sexuality is about at all. And so when we learn to do it for ourselves and we learn to invite our partners into this, that's when you get to the states of God, the states of union. I think I said to you yesterday, we were talking about the priestess, right? The priestess in the model. That's when my priestess comes out the most, is through sexuality. That's when I'm in states of most divine merging, other than having sat for weeks and weeks and weeks in meditation. I can get there in a sexual time with somebody, right? Not in 10 minutes. Not in a 10-minute sexual interaction, but after a nice long interaction where I take them on a journey. Now, you realise that as women, we are in command of the sexual act. Like, it is the realm of the feminine. Sexuality is the realm of the feminine. Do you know that story of how it was Zeus and Hera, right? So Zeus, or Hera was basically saying, Zeus was claiming to Hera that women experienced more sexual experience, you know, that actually was the realm of the feminine. And Hera was denying it. She was going, that's not true, that's not true. She was, for some reason, denying it. So they asked the only person they knew, and I can't remember his name right now, in the myth, but there's a man who had, excuse me, it was a man who had interrupted two serpents copulating, right? And Hera caught him interrupting them, and she cursed him for that. And her curse was for turning into a woman, right? And so this man was turned into a woman for 5 years. And what happened was, in that 5 years, he was in a female body. He got the opportunity to experience what it was like to be in a female body for 5 years. And of course, that included the female sexual experience. And then he saw two serpents copulating again, or she, sorry, saw two serpents copulating again, and because he didn't interrupt them, the curse was dropped by Hera. And so Zeus and Hera went to him and said, okay, to resolve this argument, I need you to tell me what was it like having sex in a male body versus having sex in a female body. because it's the only person that can actually argue that in their life. And his response was, if sex were 10 parts, 9 parts of it are for the woman. 9 parts of it for the woman. There's way more pleasure in the sexual experience for the woman, right? And then I think Hera cursed him again for letting out the secret and something else, but we'll leave it there, right? And that is true. You know, it is literally the domain. That's why I go into this. The domain of sexuality and the feminine are one and the same, right? And it doesn't mean having sex. It means the sexuality, creativity, regeneration, bringing of life. That is the realm of the feminine, right? We are the ones that create the babies. We know all about how to create a space and a container into which to grow something, to birth something, right? And this is exactly the metaphor that I use when I'm talking about creating businesses, that we birth a business. And there's a whole seeding, gestation period, and then birthing, and then manifesting and growing of the business, which is exactly what I do in the Feminine Success Academy. And I basically, you can think of me a bit like the midwife, right? You are the mother, your baby is your business or your idea or your creation, right? And you are the one creating it. And the 7 success, feminine success formula, 7-step formula, are like the containers in which the baby is being given some space that it needs to grow to fruition. As I said, to manifest your vision. Okay? So this is really, really important to understand as a microcosm and a macrocosm as a woman. And cycles, seeing flows come into your life, flows go out. Now, I said to a few of you before in private work, it's also another way of looking at it is, what I've observed is a lot of us are kind of in that the out tide. So we know when you're standing in the ocean, at the edge of the ocean, you've got the tide going out, and then the tide comes in, right? And what my observation is for many of us is when we've gone into an ongoing masculine mode, is it's a bit like we're kind of pushing the tide out, we're pushing the tide out, and even worse, we build these big dams against the ocean, and it's like a thing of the in-breath. We're pushing, and we're never letting the tide come back in. Right? So how do we expect to receive what we're putting out there that we want in our life? If we're pushing. Because the belief is that we're push, we're going to get. Right? And it's the opposite. It's limiting, and you're putting these big dams against the opportunity for it to start to come back in. That's the in-breath out. It's another way of looking at the masculine being the in-breath, the feminine being the out-breath. Masculine being the tide going out, feminine being the receiving. And there's both. You can't be doing life or running business just sitting on your ass meditating, for example. Right? You have to be, there's stages of action and there's phases of receiving, right? And it's also a bit like another metaphor would be that of tilling the ground. I use this a lot with you. And we have to make sure that we're planting our seeds into rich, fertile soil that we know is going to be nourished and watered. Right? So we plant the seed there first, which is why in the steps I said you've got to understand what you're planting. What is your calling? What are you doing? What's your mission? What's your sole purpose on the planet right now? And then understanding what your personal brand is. Who are you in this? It's like all these internal relationships first. Right? And then we start to plant the seed in the soil. Right? And then we've got to make sure that we're fertilising the soil and we're putting lots of water and nourishment into it. And then, I don't know if you know this one thing about whenever a seed is planted, it always shoots roots down first. Right? And so sometimes you're not seeing anything at first. The roots are going down. It's the whole reason, the whole rationale behind the Juicy Feminine work is creating deep, strong, vital roots into your pussy, into your feminine, such that as the first little shoot comes up and it starts to grow into a mighty tree, it has such deep, strong, rich foundational roots in the earth that when winds come and blow your tree, and they do in life, as we know, right? Anyone have winds blow their tree, blow their life in? Right, it's going to happen. But because will have such deep, strong foundational roots, the winds will just bend the tree because it's flexible, right? It's not going to get blown over by winds, by emotions, by influences, by all sorts of life circumstances. It won't get blown over. Okay. Another good metaphor for the feminine. All right, so there's a good foundation for what we're going to do today. So we put our aspirations in space. We're looking at this overarching vision of how the masculine and feminine operate. And what we're going to be focusing on today is this. We're going to be looking at healing our relationship to the masculine and the feminine. Healing the wounds to the masculine, healing the wounds to the feminine. We're going to do a beautiful abundance money meditation with Kimberly this afternoon. That's why she's joining us today. She's just joining us for the morning so she can get a feeling for the group. And then we're going to talk a bit more about the Feminine Success Academy.